Eleanor Grace returned home after a grueling day at the architecture firm, her hands still dusted with the remnants of blueprints and miniature models. She kicked off her heels, craving nothing more than a quiet night. But then she saw it. The pregnancy test lay on the bathroom counter, two pink lines clear as day. She froze. Her breath hitched. For a moment, time stood still. Gently, almost instinctively, she placed a hand over her abdomen. Her heart thundered in her chest, not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of what this meant. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and called Adrian Blackwood, her longtime boyfriend, the man she had loved for years, the brilliant and ambitious CEO of a soaring tech company. "Adrian," she said, her voice trembling with anticipation, "I have some big news." "Yeah?" His voice was clipped, distracted. "I'm still in a meeting. Can this wait?" "It can't," she said, trying to sound calm. I'm I'm pregnant." There was silence. Long, heavy, deafening. "Adrian, I'll be home tonight. We'll talk then." That evening, when Adrian walked into their apartment, Eleanor barely recognized him. There was no warmth in his eyes, no embrace, no smile. "The company is expanding," he said flatly, staring out the window with his hands in his pockets. "I'm moving to Singapore next month. The merger is finalized." Eleanor blinked, her pulse rising. "So, we'll move together?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian turned to her, his expression unreadable. "I'm marrying Celia Wu. It's part of the deal. Strictly business." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. Eleanor stepped back, stunned. "You promised me forever," she whispered. "You once said you'd build the world for me." "The world changes," he replied, emotionless. "This is an opportunity I can't pass up." Her fingers curled around the pregnancy test still tucked in her coat pocket. Slowly, she pulled it out and held it up. "I'm carrying your child, Adrian. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" He looked at her, his face void of anything human. "You'll be taken care of. My lawyers will contact you tomorrow." And just like that, he turned and walked out of the apartment, out of her life. Eleanor stood there, motionless, queasy silence filling the space that had once been theirs. She collapsed onto the floor, clutching the small plastic test like it was a lifeline in a storm. No tears came, only the sound of her own breathing, sharp and uneven. And then, in that vast, crushing quiet, something shifted. A quiet fire began to burn inside her. "You can choose power, Adrian. I choose to be a mother. I will build again. Not for you, but for this child." She was Eleanor Grace, an architect, not just of structures, but of her own future. The next morning, reality came crashing down. Adrian's lawyers contacted her, delivering an offer that was as cold as his parting words, a generous financial settlement. The apartment was silent. The contract explicitly required her to keep the pregnancy quiet and avoid any public connection to him. Eleanor's stomach churned at the thought of signing it. She confided in Sophia Bennett, her best friend since college. Sophia, a fiery freelance writer with a sharp wit, showed up at Eleanor's door with a duffel bag and a determined look. "Pack your things," Sophia said. "You're staying with me." Eleanor hesitated, her pride urging her to refuse. But Sophia's persistence broke through. "You're not alone in this, Eleanor. Let me help you." Over the next few weeks, Eleanor adjusted to life without Adrian. Sophia's small apartment became a sanctuary where Eleanor could think clearly. She threw herself into her work at the architecture firm, determined to finish a major project she had been leading, the design of a children's community center. But Adrian's betrayal had left scars deeper than Eleanor realized. One evening, she tried to return to their shared apartment, only to find the locks had been changed. Her joint bank accounts were emptied. Even her personal savings were inaccessible due to Adrian's influence. She broke down in the elevator, clutching the cold metal railing as the weight of her circumstances pressed down on her. Sophia found her the next morning curled up on the couch, pale and shaking. "He can't do this to you," Sophia said fiercely, placing a steaming cup of tea in Eleanor's hands. "But he has," Eleanor whispered. "Then we fight back." Sophia's declaration was the spark Eleanor needed. Together, they combed through legal documents, contacted local charities for temporary support, and spent late nights strategizing ways to rebuild her life piece by piece. Sophia even began researching investigative pieces about corporate abuse, determined to expose the truth. Eleanor's resilience grew with each passing day. Though she couldn't see a clear future yet, she knew she had to survive, not just for herself, but for the child growing inside her. One morning, Eleanor woke up to the first fluttering kicks of her baby. Tears filled her eyes as she placed her hand on her stomach. "We'll be okay," she whispered. "I promise." From that moment, Eleanor's purpose crystallized. Adrian had taken her past, but he wouldn't define her future. For her child, she would fight, she would rise, and she would rebuild. Eleanor Grace threw herself into her work, finding solace in the precision and focus her architecture projects required. The Children's Community Center she was designing became more than just another job. It was her lifeline. Every sketch, every model, every meeting reminded her that she was capable of creating something lasting. Even as her personal life felt like it was crumbling, her pregnancy progressed quickly. And while the challenges mounted, so did her determination. Morning sickness struck during client meetings. Her swollen feet ached after long hours standing at drafting tables. But Eleanor refused to let it slow her down. She was fighting for more than just herself now. Sophia remained an unwavering pillar of support. "Eat," Sophia would insist, sliding a bowl of soup or a protein bar onto Eleanor's desk whenever she seemed too engrossed in her work. "You're building a future for two people now, not just one." By her 7th month, the community center project was nearing completion. Eleanor had become a fixture at the site, inspecting every detail to ensure it was perfect. The center was designed to be a safe haven for children, complete with vibrant classrooms, a lush outdoor play area, and a reading nook that captured Eleanor's own childhood love for books. But the physical demands of her work began to take their toll. One afternoon, as Eleanor stood on the scaffolding reviewing a final blueprint, she felt a sharp pain shoot through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the railing for support. "Are you okay?" a concerned contractor asked. "I'm fine," Eleanor lied, though her face had turned pale. She knew it wasn't fine, but she also knew she couldn't afford to stop. Not yet. The pain subsided, and Eleanor pressed on, determined to see the project through. 2 weeks later, just days before the community center's grand opening, she went into labor. It happened at her office. Eleanor was putting the finishing touches on a presentation for the center when a contraction hit her so hard she doubled over. Sophia rushed her to the hospital, but the baby was impatient. Leo Grace was born in the early hours of the morning with a full head of dark hair and a pair of lungs strong enough to fill the entire maternity ward with his cries. Holding Leo for the first time, Eleanor felt an overwhelming wave of love and relief. He was perfect. In that moment, she made a silent promise. She would give him a life filled with security and love, no matter the obstacles. The grand opening of the community center came 2 weeks later. Eleanor attended with Leo swaddled in her arms, earning applause and admiration from the attendees. As the ribbon was cut, she felt an immense sense of pride, not just in the building she had created, but in the life she was beginning to rebuild. Leo quickly became the center of Eleanor's world. Between late-night feedings and early morning client calls, she found herself marveling at his insatiable curiosity. He reached for books before toys, babbling as if he had a million ideas to share. Watching him grow gave Eleanor strength. She began to see every challenge as an opportunity to teach him resilience. Eleanor's career also flourished. The community center project garnered widespread acclaim, leading to new opportunities and partnerships. One day, she received an email from an international firm requesting her expertise on a similar project in another city. It was a sign that her hard work was paying off. At night, when Leo was asleep, Eleanor often found herself reflecting on how far she had come. Adrian's betrayal no longer stung the way it once had. Instead, it became a distant memory, a chapter that she had closed. Her life wasn't easy. There were days when the exhaustion felt insurmountable. But Eleanor had built something far more meaningful than she ever thought possible. And as she held Leo close, reading him bedtime stories about brave adventurers and grand architects, she felt certain that their story was only just beginning. Eleanor's life flourished in the years following Leo's birth. Her reputation as a talented architect soared, and her designs for children's community centers became renowned for their warmth, creativity, and functionality. Leo, meanwhile, was growing into a bright and curious boy whose intellect often left people in awe. But while Eleanor was building a new life, Adrian Blackwood's world was falling apart. The merger with Celia Wu's company had turned sour. Their marriage, built on convenience rather than love, unraveled quickly. The business deal Adrian had sacrificed everything for began to crumble under the weight of poor management and mounting scandals. Within 3 years, the company declared bankruptcy, and Adrian's name became synonymous with failure in the tech industry. When the news of Adrian's downfall reached Eleanor, she felt no satisfaction, only a distant pity. She had moved on, focusing entirely on Leo and her career. Yet Adrian hadn't forgotten her, or the son he had never met. One day, as Eleanor prepared for a ceremony honoring her latest project, she received a message from Adrian. It was the first time he had reached out since their separation. "I'd like to meet Leo," the message read. Eleanor stared at the words, her emotions conflicted. Part of her wanted to delete the message immediately, but another part, one that valued honesty for Leo's sake, hesitated. After all, she had always told herself that Leo deserved to know where he came from, even if Adrian had failed them both. That evening, Sophia found her sitting on the couch, the message still open on her phone. "Are you actually considering this?" Sophia asked, her voice edged with disbelief. "No," Eleanor said firmly, "but I needed to think about how to explain it to Leo when the time comes." The ceremony the next day was a grand affair. Eleanor arrived with Leo, now 5 years old, holding her hand tightly. The audience marveled at Leo's curiosity as he asked questions about the building's structural design and environmental sustainability. In the crowd, unnoticed by most, Adrian stood near the back of the room. He watched silently as Eleanor and Leo received the applause they deserved. Seeing his son for the first time, Adrian felt a pang of regret so sharp it left him breathless. When their eyes met across the room, Eleanor didn't look away. Instead, she gave him a look that spoke volumes. This was the life she had built without him, and it was stronger than anything he could have imagined. Later, as the event wound down, Sophia leaned over to Eleanor. "He left," Sophia said. "Good," Eleanor replied, her tone calm. Adrian's redemption was his own journey to make, but Eleanor had no room for him in the life she had created. Leo was her future now, and every step forward was for him. 2 years passed, and Eleanor Grace's career reached new heights. Her innovative designs were being implemented in cities across the country, earning her numerous accolades. But despite her success, her most fulfilling role was as a mother to Leo. Now 7, Leo's intellectual gifts had become undeniable. He devoured books on physics, architecture, and mathematics, often surprising even Eleanor with his insights. Then came an invitation that marked a significant moment in Eleanor's journey. She was to receive a prestigious award for her contributions to community-focused architecture. The ceremony would be held in New York City, where industry leaders and influential figures would gather. Eleanor decided to bring Leo, determined to show the world the foundation of her success. As the ceremony unfolded, Eleanor felt a deep sense of pride, not just for her work, but for the life she had rebuilt. The host introduced her with glowing praise, highlighting her resilience and innovation. Eleanor walked onto the stage with Leo by her side, holding his hand. The audience erupted in applause as she began her speech. "2 years ago," Eleanor started, her voice steady, "I stood at a crossroads. My world had fallen apart, and I faced a choice, to dwell in bitterness or to rebuild with hope. Today, I stand here with my greatest creation, not a building, but my son, Leo." The crowd cheered as Leo stepped forward to present her with the award. Into the microphone, he said confidently, "My mommy is the best architect, and she's teaching me how to build amazing things too." His words brought the audience to its feet in a standing ovation. Among the crowd, Eleanor caught sight of Adrian sitting at the back of the room, his face a mixture of regret and admiration. She hadn't known he would be there, but his presence didn't faze her. Eleanor was no longer the woman he had left behind. After the ceremony, Adrian approached her cautiously. "Eleanor," he began, his voice low. She turned to face him, her posture strong and unyielding. "What do you want, Adrian?" "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, and I'd like to be part of Leo's life. If you'd let me." Eleanor paused, her gaze steady. "You don't get to walk back into our lives just because you regret your choices. Leo has a father, Adrian. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who fought for him. He doesn't need anything else." Adrian's shoulders sagged, but he nodded. "I understand. As he walked away, Eleanor turned to Leo, who was busy charming a group of architects with his ideas for futuristic buildings. She smiled, knowing that their future was brighter than ever. Eleanor had rebuilt her life not on the ashes of her past, but on the strength of her love for Leo and the dreams they shared. Together, they were unstoppable, building something far greater than any structure, a life filled with resilience, purpose, and hope. The lights of the conference hall reflected off the polished glass plaque as Eleanor Grace stood beside her son Leo, now dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. He adjusted his tie nervously, his young face glowing with excitement. The announcer's voice echoed through the room. The Margaret Hartman Award for Excellence in Community Architecture goes to Eleanor Grace and her son, Leo Grace, for their groundbreaking collaboration in sustainable design. Applause erupted as Eleanor and Leo stepped onto the stage together. Eleanor smiled warmly, gripping the microphone. "This award isn't just for me," she began, her voice steady. "It's for every parent who has faced adversity and found strength in their children. Leo has been my inspiration, my partner, and my greatest teacher." Leo beamed and leaned into the microphone. "And my mom taught me that the best things we build are made with love." The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering as mother and son shared the spotlight. After the ceremony, Eleanor and Leo wandered through the city streets hand in hand, the cool evening air wrapping around them. "What's next, Mom?" Leo asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Well," Eleanor said, squeezing his hand, "the world is full of challenges, but together we'll keep building something beautiful, one dream at a time." As they walked past a construction site, Eleanor glanced up at the skeletal framework of a new building against the night sky. For a moment, she thought of Adrian, of his empty promises and the empire he had tried to build on fragile foundations. But her heart was light. She and Leo had built something far stronger. Not an empire of steel and glass, but one of love, resilience, and hope. Together, they were unstoppable. 2 years had passed since the awards ceremony, and Adrian had worked tirelessly to prove he had changed. Starting from scratch, he threw himself into nonprofit projects supporting children and underserved communities. Every week, Adrian sent a letter to Eleanor, not to ask for forgiveness, but to share what he had learned and the values he hoped to pass on to Leo. At first, Eleanor remained silent, refusing to respond. But as the letters continued to arrive, she began to see the sincerity in Adrian's words. He was no longer the cold man who had walked away, but a father trying to make amends. Adrian also took small steps to connect with Leo. He started with thoughtful gestures, sending science books Leo loved, wishing him happy birthdays, and quietly attending events where Eleanor allowed his presence. One day, after Leo's science presentation, the boy grabbed both his parents' hands and said, Dad, can we go for ice cream? All three of us?" Eleanor hesitated, but seeing the hope in Leo's eyes, she nodded. It was the first time they sat together as a family in years, and in that moment, Eleanor felt the faintest glimmer of possibility. In the months that followed, Adrian proved himself not just as a good father, but as the supportive partner Eleanor had once dreamed of. He began helping her with architectural projects, using his connections to secure funding and support. Gone were the days of selfish ambition. Adrian had become a man of integrity and humility. One late evening after Leo had gone to bed, Adrian sat on Eleanor's couch, his hands nervously clasped. "I know what I did in the past was unforgivable," he began, his voice low, "but I'll never stop trying to make it right. Eleanor, I want us to start over, not just for Leo, but for us, if you'll allow it." Eleanor looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity she had once thought was lost forever. "Adrian, you hurt me more than you'll ever know, but Leo deserves a family, and so do I. I'm willing to try again. But you need to understand this is your last chance." Adrian smiled, tears brimming in his eyes. "I promise, Eleanor. I'll never let you down again." A year later, under the gentle morning sun, Eleanor and Adrian stood side by side with Leo as they cut the ribbon for a new community center, a project they had built together. Leo, now a confident young boy, eagerly explained his ideas to the gathered crowd, detailing the vertical garden and outdoor learning spaces he had helped design. Adrian stood beside Eleanor, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for giving me this chance," he whispered. Eleanor smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. Our family has been through so much, but now we're stronger than ever. That evening, as the three of them sat on the rooftop watching the sunset, Leo turned to his parents. Mom, Dad, can we work on another project together? Something even bigger than this center? We'll make it happen, Eleanor said, holding Leo's hand in hers. She glanced at Adrian, who nodded with a smile. Because as long as they were together, they could build anything. Under the starry sky, the three of them stayed close, dreaming of a future filled with hope, love, and all the incredible possibilities waiting ahead.